Well, hey, good morning, everybody. I'm standing out in front of our new home. So we mentioned last week online that we have a new location. We are very excited about. We're going to be meeting in the old neuroscience building, not immediately. I want to clarify that. We have some work to do, but we're working on that as we speak. But just wanted to kind of show you the new space. It's the old neuroscience building, if you're familiar with where that is at. If not, we'll make sure we get directions out and available for those that would like to join us here once we are in the space. But just wanted to mention a couple of things here before we hop on in and give you a quick little tour of the building. But wanted to make you aware that next Sunday is actually our 1-year birthday celebration. So we're turning 1 year old officially next Sunday. And we're going to just be doing a little bit of a party after church next Sunday at our barn at the Hayton home. We're going to have some pulled pork, and we're going to be just outside, of course, with everything going on with COVID. But if you would like to join us for that, it'll be outside, of course, and you don't really need to bring anything aside from yourself. So we'll be providing pulled pork and some sides and some drinks, and we also have a little cake we're going to have, and just a few fun activities for the kids. And would love to have you join us for that next Sunday, September 20th. It's crazy that we're already at that point of the month here already, but just would love to have you come on out and join us for that if you'd be interested in it. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and show you the space. We're really excited about it. There's some great kid spaces in here, but we have some demo work to do. And if you'd be interested in jumping in on that, feel free to reach out to us and we'll get you plugged in. Let's go ahead and take a look. So we're going to have a new entry door going in right here. We're working on that. This door will be coming out. And then there's a bunch of demo in here. So anybody that wants to get some good aggression out, this is your place to be. So these walls are coming out to make a nice entryway area. We got a start on it, as you can see. We've had guys already in here kind of working on pulling out walls. We've got a bunch of electrical we need to move and reroute. This was office space, and we're now going to renovate it so that we have more of a entryway area here. And then right down the hallway, bathrooms are right here on the left, nice set of bathrooms. And then we're going to be keeping a couple of these spaces for kids' rooms, which we're really excited about. So we have 3 really nice kid rooms in here that we're very excited will be able to just be used on an ongoing basis. And then we'll kind of end down here. We're walking through a lot of walls to come out, all kinds of walls. This will all be open air access. But I'll show you another really nice large kid space. This will be where our elementary kids are going to be at. So it's already set up, a projector in here, and nice screen already built in. So really nice feature for our elementary students, which would be great. And then we're going to go ahead and flip around here and then show you where the adult space will be. So this will be our auditorium sanctuary area. Can you see it with me? Maybe not. A bunch of walls that are going to need to come out, but we're really excited about it. All in all, this will be a good space. It's about 5,400 square feet. And as you go by square footage for what churches should be using, they estimate 20 to 25 square foot per person. So that puts us into the capacity of somewhere in the range of 200 to 250 people that can safely be in the space. And so we're really excited. I think this will give us a good home here as we've been going through this wonderful season and had to make the move from the school. So without further ado, if you're interested in jumping in, we'd love to have you just give us a hand if you'd like to do that. We're actively working on this space, as you can see, and our hope is to be in here by Halloween timeframe. So that's kind of the goal. Much love, and we'll go ahead and jump into worship.
Andrew said we're going to do some singing, and we sing because God is good, and we worship Him because of what He has done and what He is still doing in our lives, friends. So let's do it. Let's lift up some songs. Here we go. Rise, my soul, remember this. He took my sin and He buried on singing it. Oh, all of this for your glory. Yeah. Oh, all of this for your glory. No longer I who live, now Jesus lives in me. For I was dead in sin, but I woke up to see the light. Yeah! All right, we're gonna sing it loud. Here we go. All of this for your glory. All of this for your glory. Keep on singing it. All of this for your glory. In the quiet valley low, on every mountain high, and I will praise your name alone, for you have always been by my side. Here we sing. Good to me, so good to me, and Jesus, you're good to me. Good to me, so good to me, and faithful you'll always be. When the trials hide your face,
Jesus lives in me. For I was dead in sin, but I woke up to see the light. No longer I who live, now Jesus lives in me. For I was dead in sin, but I woke up to see the light. Yeah, Lord Jesus, the last 6 months for all of us have been different. Some of us have lost something. Some of us have gained something. But in the midst of it all, one thing was true. One thing was constant and good, and that is you. You are a good and gracious and loving God, a God that says that you are not done with us yet, a God that says that the best is yet to come. And so I pray that here today, here and now, we would be reminded of your goodness. We would be reminded of the love that you have for each and every one of us. Would we know that you see us? Would we know that you know us? You know where we've been, you know where we're at, and you love us anyways. So would today be a day where we see you more clearly, where we learn a little bit more about who you are and take one step forward in just receiving the love and the grace and the goodness that you offer us. We thank you for who you are. This is all for you. In your name we pray. Amen. Amen. Thanks so much for singing with us, friends. You can have a seat.
All right, well, hey everybody, welcome to Eagle Brook Church. I wish I could come out of that car. I wish that was like the big part of the video. We'll have to reshoot that at some point. Hey, before I dive in, if you're at one of our larger campuses like Lino Lakes, Woodbury, Blaine, I wanna just explain some of the section dividers that you see. You know, we regathered on April 15th and 16th. And when we did, we asked people to RSVP for church services. And just to be honest, that didn't work. We had people who grabbed spots and then they didn't show up. And so we were well below what our capacity was. And so we just had to give ourselves some grace and try something different. And so in week 2, we filled up to capacity and then we started turning people away. And that just did not sit right with me. I've been getting emails from the week before of people who said, you know, I didn't know what this was doing to my soul of 5 months of being away. This was so good for my spirit. And there's a story in the Gospels where these little kids are trying to come to Jesus and these disciples are like, no, can't do it. And Jesus goes, let the little kids come to me. And I know it's not a perfect analogy, but I just kept feeling this phrase and hearing this phrase, let the people come. And so we have 2 words that we've been kind of landing on in this season. It's anticipate and innovate. How do we anticipate what's coming down the road? How do we innovate in the world that we find ourselves in? And so one of our board members said, you know, you have these large rooms, they're like one room, but what if you section them off a little bit into 2 rooms or maybe even section to 3 rooms? And it was one of those ideas where we're like, no. But then I talked to a lawyer who was more familiar than any other lawyer in the state of Minnesota with the restrictions and guidelines given to churches. And he said, you know, actually that's a legitimate interpretation. To have separate entrances and exits, really the key idea is not to have cross-pollination, for lack of a better word, between the two sections. And so what we decided was this was a way for us to follow the guidelines, but also to allow people who want to come to church to come to church. And just so you know, we're not hiding this. We've contacted the governor's office. We've reached out. We've sent the proposal over. It's not something that we're keeping a secret at all. And we actually found out there's other churches in the state of Minnesota that have been doing this since June. So much for innovation, apparently. We were a little bit late to it. But here's what I want you to know. I want you to know that if you want to come to church, we have a spot for you. And sectioning it off allows us to get to a certain number. When that's full, we're gonna open up lobby space and enhance that experience. And when that's full, we're gonna add service times. Because here's what we believe. We believe that every person has the essential right to come and worship God and to hear from his word. And so if you're a person who is, at an age, thank you. If you prefer to worship online, of course, we're gonna continue with that experience. If you're feeling sick, please stay home, all those things. We've still got social distancing in place. It's a touchless experience. In fact, the people who have been coming, they've said, man, it feels way safer to me than other places I'm going. I was trying to get some beef jerky at the grocery store the other day. I couldn't get it. There was a kid, he wasn't even my own. He was coughing on my leg. I'm like, excuse me, trying to reach over to get this stuff. So when you come here, you're gonna be spaced out. It's gonna be a touchless experience. And so if you're a person who says, you know what, I've been thinking about, I'm going other places, but I haven't come to church, I want to invite you to join us. All right, it is fall kickoff. And because of that, I want to give a special welcome to students. If you're in middle school, high school, college age, boy, I know school looks different this year. And I know that for you, it probably brings its own challenges and nerves. But I know that when I went off to college for the first time, I was so homesick. And I was so nervous. But that was the year that God really began to work in my life. That was the year I learned to trust him and lean on him, and I'm praying the same for you this year as well. I want to show you a picture of the Booze Bar in Knapp, Wisconsin. I'm told it's spelled B-O-O-Z, and as you can see, this is our Eagle Brook service from the week before. And this came across my inbox. I thought this was worth sharing, but the owner of the Booze Bar and a friend of his were feeling the distance and the lack of community during the shelter-in-home period. And so when it lifted, they started something on Monday nights called Supper and a Sermon. And they've got about 30 to 50 people that gather at this bar. They don't serve alcohol, but they serve dinner. And they take in the Eagle Brook service. And some of the people who are coming to this thing were not previously attending church. And so you just go, wow, God. Isn't it amazing sometimes that we get so nervous, we think, oh boy, what's this gonna do to the church? And God's like, no, the church will prevail. So I wanna welcome those of you at the Booze Bar in Knapp, Wisconsin. All right, today we are beginning a new series called Your Future Self Will Thank You. And I wanna begin with a question. And the question is, are there decisions that you made 10 years ago that you are benefiting from today? Is there a habit that you started, a temptation that you resisted, a decision that you made maybe 10 years ago, and today you look at it and go, oh, I am so thankful that I made that decision 10 years ago. Now I want you to apply that same logic to your future self. 10 years from now, when you're 25, 45, 65, whatever it might be, is there a habit that you could start today, a temptation that you could resist today, or a decision that you could make today that 10 years from now you would look back and go, oh, I am so thankful that I made that decision? That's what this series is all about. Today's message is titled The Habits That You Start. Is there a habit that you could begin today that 10 years from now you'd look back and go, oh, I'm so grateful for that? My wife sent me a text message a couple weeks ago. She said, do you know what this bird is? She was sitting out on our deck reading a book, and this bird landed about a foot from her. And it just sat on our railing all afternoon while she was out on the deck. I looked it up, and it's an albino pigeon. It's a very rare bird. They oftentimes release them at funerals or weddings. Some of them are even racing pigeons. And we later found out this was, in fact, a racing pigeon. So they'll take them up to like Grand Rapids, they'll release them, there'll be a finish line in St. Paul, and whichever pigeon gets there first wins. Clearly, this pigeon did not win. He took a break. But people bet on this. This is like a secret society that I never even knew existed. But the pigeon, he had like a little tag on his foot, so I knew he was domesticated, I knew he wasn't wild. And so against my better judgment, I let my kids feed the pigeon. So they put food out on the deck and some water out on the deck, and then they just kind of sit there and stare at the pigeon all day, and he would stare back. And it was kind of this fun thing. It's like a free pet. He's just hanging out on your deck. He lived there for about 3 weeks. he would sleep on a light that was by our deck. Here's a picture of him sleeping. Our neighbor Nick called him Honey, but my daughter nicknamed him Snowball. Because when he would sleep, he would curl up and he would look like this snowball, and he would sleep here every night for about 3 weeks. But here was the problem. Snowball poops like every 5 minutes. I would come out in the morning and I would look under this light and it was like, you just defiled my deck. And so I'd clean it up, and then the next day it was the same problem. And so I thought to myself, I gotta get rid of the pooping pigeon. So I called the DNR, they sent me to this website, and the website said, you gotta throw a towel over him to constrain him. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. So I went out with a towel, and it was like the pigeon had seen this before. I mean, he was a genius. He's like, oh, here comes the towel routine. The minute I came out, jumped under the table, started darting between chairs. I couldn't get him. So finally, I just chased him off the deck, and he went flying through this clearing. I came in, I told my wife, I said, oh, he's gone. And he ain't coming back. I said, he was moving. And that night I walked out on the deck and there he was sleeping on my light again. The story ends when my neighbor found someone on Facebook who captures pigeons, returns them to their owner. Apparently that's a thing. And he came out and took care of it for me. But here's what I noticed about this pigeon. He always came back to my deck. I don't know how, I don't know why, but his instincts habitually brought him back no matter how hard I tried to chase him away. Some of us have a habit in our life that we have been trying to get rid of for years. You chase it away, you've tried to pray it away, you've tried to wish it away, will it away, but for some reason your instincts always habitually bring you back to that behavior. Even though that behavior might defile your relationships, it might defile your future, your job, or your career, for some reason, we always seem to come back to that habit. The Bible describes this phenomenon in rather graphic terms. It says, as a dog returns to its vomit, so a fool repeats his foolishness. What do you call something that you repeat? You call it a habit. Why would someone repeat something that they know is foolish? Well, because they're in the habit of doing so. I've had habits in my life that I knew were destructive, I knew they were foolish, but for some reason I always came back to them. In fact, think about an average day in your life. An average day in your life, the alarm goes off. Do you hit the snooze and sleep in, or do you get up and do something productive? Probably depends on what you're in the habit of doing. On the way out for work in the morning or for school, do you grab a donut for breakfast, or do you choose a healthier option? You probably have a habit one way or the other. When someone cuts you off in traffic, do you scream your head off at them? Or do you just sort of let it go? You probably have a habit one way or the other. When you get to work, do you surf the web, Snapchat friends, tell people you're working from home, even if you're not really? Or do you try to get the hardest work done first? You have a habit. When someone's gossiping, do you join in? When your boss does something that you disagree with, do you tell everybody about it? When a coworker you're not married to walks by, do you linger a little bit more? Probably depends on your habits. If we were to have video footage of you and me going throughout our day, we would not see somebody attentively navigating every decision and going, what should I do here? Instead, we would see a person who operates largely out of habit. In fact, Duke University did a study where they found that 40% of our actions are based on habit. Now think about how this might apply to your life. Some people are in the habit of going to church on the weekend. I mean, it's a miracle in some cases. I mean, they've got 4 kids, and somehow they get all the kids' faces wiped, and the kids have all got 2 shoes and 2 socks, or at least 3 out of the 4, maybe. They've got pants. I mean, come on, at least they got some pants on, and they somehow get them to church relatively on time. Other people aren't in the habit of coming, and it takes an immense amount of brain power to pull it off. First of all, they have to decide if they're gonna go. I mean, should we go? I don't know, I'm kind of tired, I don't really feel. They have to make that decision. Then they have to set their alarm, which maybe they're not used to doing. They have to talk their kids into coming, which maybe their kids aren't used to coming, and they provide some resistance. They got to punch the church address into their phone. They got to navigate the parking lot and checking in their kids. If I was having a stressful week, I'd be like, there's no way. But I don't have to exert that much brain power because it's a habit. Author Sean Covey says it this way. He says, our habits will make us or break us. We become what we repeatedly do. And this is where things get interesting to me because for the most part, we all have the same goals. If I were to ask you, what habit do you want to start this year? I mean, almost all of us would have the same response. A large chunk of you would say, I want to eat healthier. I don't think most of us are going to go, I want to eat Sour Patch Kids every day. Okay, I've been trying this for years, but I just can't quite seem to do it. I want to eat Sour Patch. No, you wouldn't do that. Most of us would say something about financial freedom. I want to set a budget. I want to stick to that budget. You might say things like, I want to read the Bible and get closer to God. You might talk about your relationships and say, boy, I really want to lose my temper less. We all have the same goals. So the question becomes, why is it that some people are successful in developing healthy habits in their lives and other people struggle? Author James Clear in his book, Atomic Habits, he says it this way. He says, goals don't determine success. That is so critical. Because you'll go to seminars and conferences and they'll say, get your idea board out, get your resolution journal, and you'll start to write down all these habits and goals that you're gonna start this year. And you're gonna close the little book or turn off your computer and you're gonna feel so pumped. And then like a pigeon returning to my deck, you're gonna go back to old habits. It's because goals do not determine success. He says systems determine success. You don't rise to the level of your goals, you fall to the level of your systems. So you can set a goal and say, and I wanna lose 20 pounds this year. I wanna become more organized this year. I want to become more financially free this year. You can set all kinds of goals like that in your life. But if you don't address the systems that led to those bad habits in the first place, you'll return to the deck. Here's what successful people do. Successful people do consistently what others do occasionally. That's the difference. Some people say, I eat healthy occasionally. Last Tuesday, I had a pretty good lunch. Some people exercise occasionally. Some people stick to the budget occasionally. Some people read their Bible occasionally. Some people go to church occasionally. But the most successful people in this world, they do those same things. They do them consistently. And it makes all the difference in the world. Now, you might be wondering, well, does the Bible say anything about this? I mean, I hear you quoting from Atomic Habits and all that, but does the Bible have anything to say? Last year, I became really interested in this idea that you become what you repeat. And so I started to look in the Bible for this idea of habits. And let me tell you something, it's all over the place. Hebrews 10:25 says, let us not give up meeting together as some are in the habit of doing. Gathering together, meeting together, you're either in the habit of it or you're not. Daniel chapter 6 says, but when Daniel learned that the law had been signed, and by the way, this was bad news for him, he went home and he knelt down as usual. Now you may think, well, maybe he just knelt down because he got some bad news and all of a sudden he was desperate. No, he usually did this. He knelt down in his upstairs room with its windows open towards Jerusalem. He prayed 3 times a day, just as he had always done it, giving thanks to his God. In other words, he had the habit of 3 times a day praying and meeting with God. Luke 5:16 says, but Jesus often withdrew, not sometimes, not occasionally, often withdrew to lonely places and prayed. Final one, Romans 7 says, Paul writes, I do things that I don't want to do. Can you relate to that at all? I do things that I don't want to do. I don't want to eat that way. I don't want to lose my temper that much. I don't want to interact with that person and be as critical and controlling as I am, but for some reason, I do things that I don't want to do. It's the story of some of our lives. We have good intentions, but like a pigeon returning to the deck, we habitually go back to certain behaviors. And so in our time left, I want to give us 3 ways that you can develop healthy habits in your life. And I'm telling you, if you will apply this message, not just listen to it, but if you will apply it, 10 years from now, you're going to look back on this message and go, thank you. Thank you that you started that habit because I am benefiting from it today. Here's the first way that you can develop healthy habits. It's this: focus on the how, not the what. When most of us talk about habits, we think, okay, what do I want to do? But as I mentioned, just setting goals doesn't accomplish goals. The most important question is, how are you gonna start with that healthy habit in your life? How is the most important question. In fact, I wanna go back to Daniel chapter 6 for just a moment. Daniel knew how. He received a bad report. And there are gonna be times in your life when you're gonna receive a bad report. You're gonna be sitting in a doctor's office, the doctor's gonna come in, and it's gonna be bad news. Some of us know what that's like. You're gonna get a call from the teacher or from a police officer, and it's gonna be bad news. You're gonna get called into your boss's office, and it's not going to be good. And the question is, how are you gonna respond to that? Well, probably what you're in the habit of doing. Daniel had a habit. He knelt down in his upstairs room with his windows open towards Jerusalem. He knew exactly when and where. He didn't just say, you know what, I want to exercise. He knew when he was exercising, where he was exercising. It was on the calendar. He didn't just say, I want to read the Bible. He knew it's happening at this time. It's on the calendar. This is where it's going to be. And notice it says he prayed 3 times a day. Many scholars believe that this was attached to meals. So in the morning, as you're eating breakfast, you're drinking your coffee, you spend some time reading the Bible. Over lunch, you take a walk around to, get a little exercise and get some fresh air. You just pray to God. You put a devotional by your bed, and right before you go to bed, you just read a little bit of it. Because he had a habit, he knew when, he knew where. This is how healthy habits are formed. According to a recent study, if you want to go running in the morning, first thing in the morning, you should put your running shoes and your running outfit right by your bed. That way you wake up, it's right there, you put it on, you're ready to go. Then give yourself a reward. Come back, drink your morning coffee. Have a running log where you write it down and you get the sense of satisfaction of you ran 2 miles. Share that running log with a friend and get the positive affirmation where they're like, dude, you ran 2 miles today, that's incredible. And you are on your way towards a healthy habit. I've experienced this is true in my own life. In fact, for years, the number one place where I lied the most was the dentist office. And the question that would always get me was, do you floss? And I would say, yeah. Because that was true. Like 3 months ago, I ate corn and I had something stuck in my teeth and I went to floss. So yeah, I do floss, but I didn't floss regularly. Until this year, I did something so simple. I took the dental floss out of my drawer and set it on the vanity. So now when I brush my teeth, I see it sitting there. That one simple, obvious act, I've flossed my teeth more this year than probably my whole life combined. Friends, you know what you want to do. You know the habits that you want to begin. Now you need to ask the question, how? Here's the second way that you can develop healthy habits. Don't expect instant results. So about 10 years ago, I used to go on these workout kicks, and so I had been lifting for like 2 days, and I was standing in the mirror of my bathroom, kind of checking everything out a little bit, and my wife walked in, and I said, hey, look, I'm getting ripped. And she looked at me and she said, oh, that was it. Now you know what that means. But the truth is, you don't get ripped in 2 days. And here's why: success lags. If you start eating healthy today, it's not gonna show up in your cholesterol test next week. If you start exercising today, you're not gonna see muscle definition for at least a couple of months. If you say, you know what, I'm gonna stop going to Starbucks every day and I'm gonna use that money to pay off my school loans. After about a month or two, you will look at your school loans and they will have gone from $35,500 to $35,400. And you'll go, I'm not even making a dent. And you will wrongly conclude that small actions, small habits don't matter all that much. The opposite is also true. I mean, you can play video games for 3 hours and not get your homework done. You're not gonna fail the class for doing that. If you don't go to church next weekend, your life's not gonna fall apart. You can eat the whole box of Oreos and you won't really notice any difference the next day or feel any different. And so we wrongly conclude that our bad habits, if they're small enough, don't really affect our life that much. And here's what we miss. Our life is the sum total of all the small decisions that we make. James Clear, again, in his book says this. He says, the costs of your good habits are in the present. The cost of your bad habits are in the future. What does he mean by that? Well, usually bad habits, they reward you on the front end, but they cost you later. I can't tell you how many people I've talked to who were single or married, and they did something sexually with a person that they weren't married to. And let's just be honest, it felt good in the moment. There was an immediate reward that they got. But one day, 1 week, 1 year later, it cost them. The opposite is also true. Most of our good habits cost us on the front end and they reward us later. So you say, you know what, I don't really like to exercise. I mean, who really does? I don't want to have a salad for lunch. I want to eat cake. Me too. I want to do these things now because they feel good in the moment. But when you cost yourself on the front end, usually you reward yourself in the future. Clear goes on to say this in his book. He says, as a general rule, the more immediate the pleasure you get from an action, the more strongly you should question whether it aligns with your long-term goals. Now, not every habit is created equal. In fact, there are some habits known as keystone habits. And a keystone habit is a habit that leads to other good habits. So for example, family dinners have been shown to be a huge keystone habit. Students, kids who have a regular family dinner, they show more emotional control and they perform better in school. I mean, I know our lives are busy, but we ought to, if you're a family, if you're a young parent, doing everything you can to have some family dinners. It's that predictive in a student's life. Reading the Bible, keystone habit. Hard to sin over everybody at work when you've been listening to the YouVersion app on the way into work, right? I mean, I can tell when I haven't been reading my Bible. I get stressed, I get fearful, I get indecisive. It's a keystone habit. Going to church, keystone habit. One study conducted over a 21-year period of time found that people who attend church, which is good news for everyone here and watching online today, people who attend church, 13% less likely to die than those who didn't. USA Today picked this up. They're like, going to church is the wonder drug. T.M. Lerman, who is a professor of anthropology at Stanford, he said that going to church is good for you. Shows people who have higher levels of mental health, they had higher levels of happiness. They even reported better sex in marriage. Right now, husbands all across America are like, honey, get in the car, we're going to church. You haven't wanted to go to church? Just get in the car, right? It's the same for students. Students who attend church, less likely to smoke, abuse drugs, abuse alcohol, commit crimes. They have higher GPAs. You ought to be doing everything you can to have your kids in church on a regular basis. It's that predictive. And don't wait till they're 17 and it's a train wreck and now you're trying to convince them of it. Start young when it becomes a habit. In the Old Testament, there was a man named Zerubbabel who was wanting to rebuild the temple, but he could only get a little start. And so God sent this prophet, Zechariah, to speak to him. And these are words that I believe some of us need to hear today. He said to him, do not despise these small beginnings. Sometimes we think, well, it's just a little bit. I'm just trying to start. It's not that big of a deal, but it's not true. He says, do not despise these small beginnings, for the Lord rejoices to see the work begin. What is it that you just need to start? The Bible has 1,189 chapters in it. If you just read one chapter a day, you'll have read through the whole Bible in 3 years. If you start that practice at the age of 21, by the time you're 50, you'll have read through the Bible 10 times. Some days it will be inspiring and thought-provoking. It's gonna feel like God is speaking right to you. Other days it's gonna be tedious and you're gonna wonder, why am I even doing this? But that one discipline will make you a wise person. It will give you a wisdom that you can't get at any seminar or conference. In fact, if I could for just a moment speak to middle school, high school, teenage, young adults, if you're in your 20s. I'm in my 40s, that probably seems really old to you, but I realized this week that some of the best habits I have in my life, I started when I was between the ages of 12 and 24. And I'm benefiting from them today. If you can't obey your parents right now, what makes you think you're gonna be able to obey your boss one day? Or God? If you can't put your phone on airplane mode and get your homework done now, what makes you think you're gonna have the work ethic to be hired for a job 10 years from now? I mean, just think about this with me. What teenager has a brighter future for their life? The one who says, I'm gonna party on the weekend, hang out with people who don't care about God, not going to church, not reading my Bible, slack on my homework, don't have any goals, not listening to my parents. Or the one who says, you know what, I'm gonna surround myself with good, godly people, I'm gonna read the Bible, I'm gonna be in church, I've got goals, I'm gonna work hard, I'm gonna pursue those dreams. Which one do you think is gonna be better off 10 years from now? I mean, that's not a trick question, you know the answer. But you have to start. Not next weekend, not after the weekend after that. You need to start right now. In fact, let me ask you, is there something in your life for all of us right now that you just need to start? What is that? Don't be discouraged when you don't see instant results. Here's the third way to develop good habits, and it's pretty simple. You gotta eliminate bad habits. Up here with me, I've got a board that has a nail in it. And I'm like the least handy person you know. So this could go really bad. It probably will. But sometimes when you're working on something and you've got a nail stuck in a board, there's a couple different ways that you can try to get the nail out. But one of the best ways is to pound it out with another nail. To just kind of pop it in here and go, and pop it out. Same thing is true for habits. Sometimes the best way to get rid of a bad habit is to replace it with a good habit. You keep the same trigger and cue, you keep the same reward, but you change the habit, you replace it in between. Here's what author Charles Duhigg, who's written a lot about habits, says. He says, you cannot extinguish a bad habit, you can only change it. You can only replace it. How do you do that? Well, there's a bunch of different ways, one of which is make your bad habits hard. My oldest son did this. He had a habit of going into the pantry and taking a handful of chocolate chips. And you just go in there multiple times a day, just grab chocolate chips and eat the chocolate chips. And then on his own, without me telling him, he thought, you know what, I've got some goals for my life. I'm playing basketball and being an athlete. And so he took the chocolate chips and he put them up on the top shelf where he couldn't reach them. Because no teenager is gonna go get the stool and like go through all that effort. Kind of bugged me because I came in looking for the chocolate chips and they were way up there. I couldn't reach them either. What is it that you need to put out of reach this week? Some of us, you need to put your alcohol out of reach. You need to take the secret stash, go throw it in the garbage. Tell someone you love, hey, don't let me do that again. You need to put it out of reach. Some of us have, maybe it's internet access. And it causes you to do things that you don't want to do. And maybe you say this week, you know what, I'm gonna get rid of that. I don't wanna do that anymore. And it's good for other people to have internet access, but not for me. I'm gonna put that out of reach. Maybe for you this week, you say, you know what, that app on my phone, it wastes so much time, and I have other things I need to be doing, and I'm gonna delete that app. I'm gonna put it out of reach. I'm gonna invite each of you to do something this week. You can go on to eaglebrookchurch.com/futureself or text future to 75787. Here's what you're gonna do when that happens. You're gonna write a letter to yourself. And we're gonna email you that letter in 6 months. Write a letter. We don't even see what the letter is. It's perfectly confidential, but you write the letter and it will show up in your inbox 6 months from now. What if 6 months from now you got an email and you looked at it and realized you've been sober for 6 months? What if you get that email and you realize that your relationship with your son, your relationship with your daughter is so much better than where it was before? And it was because you started a different habit. What do you want to say to yourself 6 months from now? What is one habit that you could start in your life that 6 months from now you would look back and go, oh, I'm so grateful I did that? Let's close in prayer together at all of our campuses. Lord, I pray for anyone here who has a habit in their life that is destructive. And it's hurting relationships, it's hurting our future. God, remind us right now that Jesus Christ, you love us no matter what. And even when we fail, you never fail us. And God, you're always willing to offer mercy and grace and a fresh start. God, I pray this weekend is a fresh start for many people. A fresh start to say, you know what, I'm gonna start this habit in my life, and I believe that 6 months from now, 12 months from now, 12 years from now, I'm gonna look back and thank myself for it. God, not by our power, not by our might, but I pray for your power and strength across all of our campuses and for those who are online, that we can develop healthy habits that honor you and lead to the kind of life you want us to have. God, I pray all these things in Jesus' name. Amen. Hey, if you need prayer, come on down front. Otherwise, have a great weekend, everybody.
Well, hey, everybody. Hopefully you enjoyed a new message series here. Very exciting message, I know, from Pastor Jason, and encourage you to really take that step of writing the letter to your future self 6 months from now. If you'd like to have us coordinate with you, feel free to text us at 94000, and we would be happy to work through the details on that to make sure you can go ahead and receive that letter here in 6 weeks. And we are just excited about our new space again, standing here still out in front of Neuroscience. Goals to be in here by Halloween time. Have a lot of work to do, a lot of renovations on the inside, as you saw earlier, but we're very excited to have a space that we can stay warm in here in the winter, and hopefully be able to really relaunch and reopen with a lot of those safety measures that I know many of you are concerned about that are just joining us online. So we're working through those pieces as well, but would love to have you come and check things out once we're back in the space if you feel comfortable to do so. But love you all and have a great week, everyone.